The fluorescent lights of Martin's grocery flickered above me, casting an unnatural pallor over the empty aisles. It was almost midnight, the final stretch of my double shift. My fingers ached as I counted the day's receipts, the paper edges leaving tiny cuts I wouldn't notice until later when hand sanitizer would make them sting. 20 minutes, Ellie, and we're out. My manager Mike called from the back office, his voice echoing through the deserted store. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. 20 more minutes until I could drag myself to the bus stop, ride 40 minutes across town, and collapse into my threadbare couch. My apartment would be empty and silent, just as I'd left it 18 hours ago. The weight of exhaustion pressed down on my shoulders. At 24, I'd imagined my life would be different, not working 2 jobs to make rent, not taking online classes that I was too tired to focus on, not living paycheck to paycheck with medical bills still piling up from my father's final hospital stay. The soft ding of the front door startled me. I'd forgotten to lock it after the last customer. "I'm sorry, we're closed," I called out, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind my ear, trying to sound more authoritative than I felt. No response. I looked up from the register and my breath caught. A man stood just inside the doorway, his presence immediately filling the space in a way that made the store feel smaller. He wasn't particularly tall, perhaps 6 feet, but something about him commanded attention. His charcoal suit looked expensive, the kind that shimmered subtly under the harsh store lighting. His dark hair was styled perfectly, not a strand out of place. But it was his eyes that held me. Dark, observant, they swept across the store before settling on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "I'm sorry, sir, but we're closed," I repeated, my voice smaller this time. He didn't acknowledge my words. Instead, he moved deeper into the store, disappearing down the cereal aisle. I bit my lip, uncertain whether to follow or call Mike. Something about the man felt dangerous, but not in the way I should fear for my safety, more like I should be careful not to get too close to a fire that could consume me. I decided to give him a minute. Perhaps he just needed something quickly. I returned to counting the receipts, but my focus was gone. I found myself straining to hear his movements, to catch a glimpse of him between the shelves. The scent of his cologne lingered in the air, something expensive and subtle, sandalwood mixed with something I couldn't name. The door chimed again. This time, 3 men entered, their laughter cutting through the quiet store. They wore baggy clothes, hoodies pulled up despite the warm spring night. One had a tattoo crawling up his neck, disappearing under his jawline. Another wore a baseball cap sideways, revealing just enough of his face for me to see the cruel twist of his mouth. "Hey, sweetheart," the third one called out, leaning against the counter. His breath reeked of alcohol and cigarettes. "Ring us up some beers, will ya?" I straightened, trying to appear taller than my 5'4" frame. "I'm sorry, we're closed. The registers are already shut down for the night." "Come on, don't be like that." He leaned closer. "Pretty girl like you should be more accommodating." My heart hammered against my ribs. Mike was in the back, probably with headphones on as he balanced the day's accounts. The mysterious man in the suit was somewhere in the store, but I doubted he'd help. I was alone. "You need to leave," I said, my voice wavering despite my effort to sound firm. "Now." The tallest of the 3 laughed, a harsh sound that sent ice down my spine. "Or what? You gonna make us?" I reached for my phone beneath the counter, but before my fingers could touch it, the tattooed one grabbed my wrist. His grip was painful, his fingers digging into my skin. "Don't even think about it," he growled. Panic rose in my throat, threatening to choke me. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. The other 2 moved around the counter, boxing me in. The smell of them, beer, sweat, and something chemical, made my stomach turn. "Let go of me," I demanded, but the tremor in my voice betrayed my fear. "We just want some beers," the one in the cap said, moving closer. "And maybe whatever's in that register." "The register's empty," I lied. "We already made the night deposit." The one holding my wrist twisted it slightly, making me gasp. "Don't lie to us, sweetheart. That's not nice." I was about to scream for Mike when a voice cut through the tension. Smooth, quiet, but somehow filling every corner of the store. "I believe the lady asked you to leave." We all turned. The man in the suit stood at the end of the counter, his hands casually in his pockets. Up close, I could see his features more clearly. The sharp line of his jaw, the slight curl of his dark hair at the nape of his neck, the way his eyes seemed to hold shadows within them. The thugs hesitated, exchanging glances. "Mind your own business, man," the tattooed one said, but there was a new edge to his voice. Uncertainty. The suited man took a step forward, and though nothing in his expression changed, something in the air shifted. My skin tingled with an inexplicable awareness of danger, not directed at me, but radiating from him. "Her safety is my business," he said, his voice still quiet but edged with steel. He glanced at me, and for a moment, something possessive flashed in his eyes. I didn't understand it. I'd never seen this man before in my life. Yet he was looking at me as if I belonged to him in some way, as if these men weren't just threatening a store clerk, but taking something that was his. The tallest thug scoffed, trying to maintain his bravado. "There's 3 of us and 1 of you, fancy pants. What are you gonna do?" The suited man smiled then, a small curve of his lips that never reached his eyes. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. "I won't have to do anything," he said softly. As if on cue, the front door opened again. 2 broad-shouldered men entered, their faces expressionless, their stances wide. They wore simple dark suits, but there was nothing simple about the way they moved. Efficient, alert, dangerous. The atmosphere in the store changed instantly. The 3 thugs released me and stepped back, their earlier confidence evaporating. "We don't want trouble," the one in the cap muttered, already edging toward the door. "Yet you came looking for it," the suited man said. His eyes traveled to my wrist, where red marks were forming from the thug's grip. Something dark passed over his face. A flash of rage so intense it made me flinch. He nodded once to his men, a tiny movement I almost missed. "Take them outside," he said, his voice flat. "Teach them about respect." The 2 guards moved with frightening speed, grabbing the thugs before they could flee. They didn't struggle much. Something about the guards' demeanor made it clear resistance would be futile. As they were dragged out, the suited man turned to me. He reached for my hand, lifting it gently to examine my wrist. His touch sent electricity through my veins, a current that both alarmed and intrigued me. "You're hurt," he said, his thumb brushing over the marks, his eyes locked on mine. "It's nothing," I whispered, unable to look away from him. Up close, I could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes. "It's not nothing," he countered, his jaw tightening. "No one touches what's mine." The words hung in the air between us, making no sense yet somehow sending a shiver of recognition through me. I didn't know this man. I'd never seen him before tonight, yet the way he looked at me, like he'd been searching for me, like he'd found something precious, made my breath catch. "I don't even know your name," I managed to say. His lips curved into a smile, different from the one he'd given the thugs. This one held warmth, though still carefully controlled. "Vince," he said. "Vincent Romano." The name settled over me like a shadow. I'd heard it before. Whispers in the city, a name spoken with fear and respect. Vincent Romano, the businessman whose empire extended far beyond legitimate enterprises. Vincent Romano, who some said controlled half the city through means better left unquestioned. "Ellie," I replied, my voice barely audible. "Ellie Sanders." "Ellie," he repeated, my name sounding different on his lips. Precious, protected. "You shouldn't be working here, especially not this late." Before I could respond, Mike burst from the back office, his face flushed with alarm. "What's going on?" I heard. He stopped abruptly when he saw Vince, his eyes widening in recognition and fear. "Mr. Romano," he stammered. "I didn't know you were here. Is everything okay?" Vince didn't take his eyes off me. "Everything is fine now, but your security is unacceptable. This young woman was just accosted by 3 men while you were hiding in your office." Mike paled. "I didn't hear anything until just now. I'm so sorry, Mr. Romano. I'll make sure." "You'll make sure she never works another closing shift," Vince interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "And you'll double your security presence." Mike nodded frantically. "Of course, sir." Right away. I stared between them, confusion swirling through my exhaustion. How did my manager know this man? Why was he taking orders from him? And why did Vincent Romano care about my safety? Your shift is over, Vince said to me, finally releasing my wrist. I immediately felt the absence of his touch, like a candle blown out. My driver will take you home. It wasn't a question or an offer. It was a statement of fact. The most disconcerting part was that I didn't want to refuse. Despite everything I'd been taught about stranger danger, despite the obvious warning signs that this man was dangerous, I felt drawn to him. That's not necessary, I said anyway, clinging to the last shreds of my common sense. I can take the bus. His jaw tightened, a muscle flexing beneath his smooth skin. It's nearly midnight. The bus is not an option. Mr. Romano is right, Ellie, Mike interjected nervously. Let his driver take you. I'll finish closing up. The front door opened again, and one of the suited guards returned. He gave a subtle nod to Vince, who seemed to understand some unspoken message. It's done, the guard said quietly. I didn't want to know what it was, or what had happened to the 3 men outside. The less I knew, the better. Gather your things, Vince said to me, his tone gentler now. Anthony will drive you home. I hesitated, caught in an impossible situation. Every instinct told me to decline, to maintain the boundary between his world and mine. But my feet ached, my wrist throbbed, and the thought of waiting alone at the bus stop after what had just happened made my skin crawl. Okay, I finally agreed. Thank you. I collected my purse from under the counter and my jacket from the break room. When I returned, Vince was waiting by the door, his posture relaxed but alert. He opened the door for me, his hand hovering near the small of my back as I passed, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat of him. Outside, a sleek black Bentley idled at the curb, its engine a soft purr in the night. The driver, Anthony, stood beside it, opening the rear door as we approached. I expected Vince to send me off with his driver, but instead, he slid into the car beside me, his leg brushing against mine in the spacious back seat. The interior smelled of leather and his subtle cologne. The privacy partition was already raised, sealing us off from the driver. Where do you live? Vince asked, as the car pulled away from the curb. I gave my address reluctantly, knowing it would reveal the shabby neighborhood where I rented my 1-bedroom apartment. If he judged me for it, his expression didn't change. How do you know my manager? I asked after a moment of silence, unable to contain my curiosity. Vince's lips curved slightly. I own the building, among others. You own Martin's grocery? I own the property. Martin leases it from one of my companies. I processed this information, trying to reconcile the man beside me with the shadowy figure from rumors and whispers. Up close, he seemed both more and less than the stories. More human, with the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he watched me, but also more dangerous, with the controlled power I could sense beneath his calm exterior. Those men, I said quietly. What happened to them? Vince studied me for a moment, as if deciding how much to tell me. They were reminded that actions have consequences. A chill ran down my spine. Did you hurt them? They hurt you, he replied, as if that answered everything. We lapsed into silence again. I stared out the window, watching as we moved from the commercial district into residential neighborhoods, eventually reaching the more rundown areas where I lived. I felt embarrassed as we pulled up to my apartment building with its cracked concrete steps and graffiti-tagged mailboxes, but Vince's expression remained neutral. Thank you for the ride, I said, reaching for the door handle. His hand closed over mine, stopping me. Wait for Anthony to open it. He'll walk you to your door. That's really not... Please, Ellie. There was something in his voice, not quite vulnerability, but a crack in his composed facade. Humor me. I nodded, oddly touched by his concern despite its intensity. True to his word, Anthony opened my door and escorted me to the building entrance. I fumbled for my keys, acutely aware of Vince watching from the car, his silhouette visible through the window. Thank you, I said to Anthony, who nodded silently. As I unlocked my door, Vince's window lowered. Ellie, he called softly. I turned back, the streetlight illuminating half his face, leaving the other in shadow. "I'll see you again," he said. Not a question, not a request. A promise that should have frightened me, but instead sent warmth spreading through my chest. I didn't respond, just slipped inside and closed the door behind me. I leaned against it, listening as the Bentley's engine faded into the distance, leaving me alone with questions I couldn't answer and a feeling I couldn't name. I didn't know then that this night, this chance encounter, would change everything. I didn't know that Vincent Romano had just claimed me in ways I couldn't yet understand. I didn't know that by saving me, he had entangled me in a world I was never meant to enter. I only knew that as I finally sank onto my couch, exhausted yet strangely alert, I couldn't stop seeing his eyes, feeling his touch on my wrist, hearing his words. "No one touches what's mine." I didn't belong to anyone. I never had. So why did those words feel like coming home? Sleep evaded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying every moment with Vincent Romano in my mind. His eyes, his voice, the possessive way he'd looked at me. It all felt like a dream, too surreal to have actually happened. But the fading red marks on my wrist hold a different story. By morning, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. Vincent Romano was simply a powerful businessman who happened to be in the right place at the right time. His protection was nothing more than basic human decency, his intensity merely his natural demeanor. The "what's mine" comment was just a figure of speech. I repeated these rationalizations as I got ready for my morning shift at Rena's Diner, my second job. The familiar routine of pulling on my pale blue uniform and tying my hair back grounded me in reality, washing away the surreal events of the previous night. The diner was already bustling when I arrived, the morning rush of commuters seeking coffee and breakfast before work. I dove into the chaos, grateful for the distraction. For a few hours, I was just Ellie the waitress again, balancing plates and memorizing orders, not the girl who'd caught the attention of Vincent Romano. "You seem distracted today, Margot," the 60-year-old cook with arms strong from decades of flipping pancakes, commented as I picked up an order. "Long night," I replied, forcing a smile. "Double shift at the grocery store." She clucked her tongue sympathetically. "You work too hard, sweetie. You're young. You should be out having fun, not killing yourself for minimum wage." If only she knew how exciting my night had actually been. The morning rush had just begun to subside when the bell above the door chimed. I was wiping down a recently vacated table, my back to the entrance, but something in the sudden hush that fell over the diner made me turn. Vincent Romano stood in the doorway, as out of place in the Greasy Spoon diner as a wolf among sheep. He wore a different suit today, navy blue, perfectly tailored to his athletic frame. Behind him, one of his guards, not Anthony, but equally imposing, surveyed the room with practiced efficiency. My heart stuttered in my chest. What was he doing here? How did he even know where I worked? His eyes found me immediately, as if drawn by some invisible thread. A small smile curved his lips as he made his way toward me, patrons shifting instinctively to clear his path. "Ellie," he said, my name like silk on his tongue. "Good morning." "Mr. Romano," I managed, clutching my rag like a lifeline. "What are you doing here?" He raised an eyebrow, amused by my directness. "Having breakfast, I hope, and please call me Vince." "Right," I said, flustered. "Of course, this way." I led him to a booth in the corner, away from the windows, choosing it instinctively, somehow knowing he'd prefer privacy. His bodyguard took a position near the door, standing with his back to the wall, eyes constantly scanning. Vince slid into the booth with effortless grace. Up close, in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the diner, he should have looked less intimidating than he had in the dim grocery store. Instead, the daylight only accentuated his features. The sharp line of his jaw, the intensity of his dark eyes, the subtle power evident in every movement. "Coffee?" I asked, falling back on waitress autopilot. "Please." He nodded, his eyes never leaving my face. I returned with the coffee pot, painfully aware of every eye in the diner watching us. My hand trembled slightly as I poured, and when I set down the mug, his fingers brushed against mine. Deliberately, I was certain. "How's your wrist?" he asked, nodding toward the faint marks that remained. "Fine," I replied automatically. It was nothing, really. His jaw tightened, a muscle flexing beneath his smooth skin. It wasn't nothing, Ellie. I swallowed hard. What happened to those guys? Vince took a sip of his coffee, his expression unreadable. They won't bother you again. The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. Not from fear for myself, but from the certainty that those 3 men had experienced something terrible. Are you ready to order? I asked, desperate to shift back to safer ground. What do you recommend? The blueberry pancakes are good, I offered. Or the Denver omelet. I'll have whatever you like best, he said, handing me back the menu without looking at it. The French toast, then, with strawberries. He nodded, seemingly pleased by my choice. Perfect. As I turned to place his order, he caught my hand. When do you finish here today? My pulse quickened. 2:00. Why? I'd like to take you to dinner tonight. It wasn't a question, not really. But it wasn't a command either. There was something in his eyes, a hint of vulnerability beneath the confidence, that made me hesitate. I don't think that's a good idea, I said quietly. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, sending shivers up my arm. Why not? Because you're dangerous. Because you're obviously involved in something illegal. Because the way you look at me terrifies and thrills me in equal measure. I don't even know you, I said instead. His lips curved into a smile. That's precisely why dinner would be appropriate. To get to know each other. Mr. Romano, Vince, I appreciate what you did last night, but I'll pick you up at 7, he interrupted gently, releasing my hand. Wear something nice. Before I could protest further, Margot called from the kitchen. Order up, Ellie. I hurried away, my thoughts in turmoil. By the time I returned with his food, I'd formulated a firm but polite rejection. But the words died on my lips when I saw him on his phone, speaking quietly but intensely. I don't care what it costs, he was saying, his voice low. Find out who owns her debt and buy it. All of it. By tonight. He ended the call when he noticed me approaching, slipping the phone into his pocket with a smooth motion. Your French toast, I said, setting the plate before him, trying to pretend I hadn't heard anything. Thank you, Ellie. He smiled, but his eyes were calculating, watching my reaction. Is everything all right? Were you talking about me just now? I blurted, unable to contain myself. About buying my debt? A flash of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by something like admiration. You're observant. Answer the question, I insisted, forgetting for a moment who I was speaking to. Instead of being angered by my demand, he seemed almost pleased. Yes. I stared at him, stunned by his directness. Why? Because it bothers me to think of you working 2 jobs to pay off debts that aren't even yours, he said simply. I sank into the seat opposite him, my legs suddenly unsteady. How do you know about that? About my father's medical bills? I make it my business to know things, Ellie. He cut into the French toast, taking a bite and nodding appreciatively. This is excellent. You can't just buy my debt, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That's invasive and controlling. It's assistance, he countered calmly. Nothing more. And what do you want in return? I asked, suspicion creeping into my voice. His eyes darkened, and for a moment, he looked genuinely hurt. Not everything comes with strings attached, Ellie. In my experience, it does, I replied. My father had taught me that lesson well, borrowing from one loan shark to pay another until his illness had finally caught up with him, leaving me with the aftermath. Vince set down his fork, his full attention on me. I want to help you, that's all. Why? You don't even know me. I know enough, he said, his voice dropping to a timbre that made my skin prickle. I know you work 2 jobs to support yourself. I know you take online classes in business management, hoping for a better future. I know you care for elderly Mrs. Finch in apartment 3B, bringing her groceries when her arthritis flares up. My mouth went dry. How could you possibly know all that? As I said, I make it my business to know things. His gaze softened slightly, especially about people who interest me. And I interest you. I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. More than you can imagine. The intensity in his eyes made heat rise to my cheeks. The diner had grown quieter, and I became aware again of the curious glances from other patrons and staff. I stood up abruptly. I should get back to work. Vince nodded. seemingly untroubled by my sudden retreat. 7 o'clock, Ellie. I'll send Anthony. I wanted to refuse again, to make it clear that I wasn't available for whatever game he was playing, but something in the way he looked at me, like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve, a treasure he'd unexpectedly discovered, made the words stick in my throat. Instead, I just nodded and hurried back to the counter, feeling his eyes on me every step of the way. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I caught snippets of whispered conversations, my name and Vincent's mentioned together with speculative glances. By the time I clocked out at 2, rumors were already spreading that I was his mistress, his long-lost daughter, an undercover federal agent. The truth was both simpler and more complex. I was nothing to him, yet he acted as if I were everything. I practically ran home, eager to escape the curious stares and whispered questions. My apartment welcomed me with its familiar shabbiness. The second-hand furniture, the water stain on the ceiling that resembled Australia, the stack of textbooks on my coffee table. Normal. Safe. Mine. I sank onto my couch, burying my face in my hands. What was happening to me? Why couldn't I simply tell Vincent Romano no and mean it? A part of me, a small, dangerous part, was intrigued, not just by his wealth or power, but by the way he looked at me, as if he saw something in me that no one else did. As if, to him, I wasn't just another invisible girl struggling to survive. I dozed off on the couch, exhaustion finally claiming me. When I woke, the afternoon light was fading, and my phone showed 5:30 p.m. Panic surged through me. I had less than 2 hours before he would send his driver. I still hadn't decided whether to go. The rational part of me screamed danger. Vincent Romano was clearly connected to something illegal, possibly dangerous. The rumors about his business interests ranged from money laundering to worse things I didn't want to contemplate. But another part of me, a part I barely recognized, whispered, "What if this is your chance? A chance to escape the endless cycle of work and worry, a chance to be seen." I stood under the shower, letting the hot water wash away the scent of diner grease and indecision. By the time I stepped out, I'd made my choice. I would go to dinner with Vincent Romano. Once. I would make it clear that I wasn't interested in whatever he was offering. I would thank him properly for his help the previous night. And then I would close the door on whatever this was before it could begin. My wardrobe offered limited options for something nice. I finally settled on a forest green dress I'd bought for a job interview last year. Simple but elegant, with a modest neckline and a hem that fell just above my knees. I curled my auburn hair, applied more makeup than I usually wore, and slipped on my only pair of heels. At exactly 6:55 p.m., a knock sounded at my door. I opened it to find Anthony standing in the hallway, as impassive as ever in his dark suit. "Miss Sanders," he nodded. "Mr. Romano is waiting." I grabbed my small clutch purse and followed him down the stairs, my stomach a knot of anxiety and anticipation. The same Bentley from the previous night waited at the curb, but this time, when Anthony opened the door, Vincent wasn't inside. Instead, Anthony held the door for me, then circled around to the driver's seat. "Where is Mr. Romano?" I asked, settling into the plush leather seat. "Meeting you at the restaurant, miss," Anthony replied, his eyes meeting mine briefly in the rearview mirror. He had business to attend to first. The drive took us from my rundown neighborhood into the heart of the city, the buildings growing taller and more elegant as we traveled. Anthony finally pulled up in front of Aureole, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, a place where reservations were typically booked months in advance. "We're dining here?" I asked, unable to hide my surprise. Anthony's lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Mr. Romano owns it." Of course he did. Anthony escorted me inside, where the maitre d' immediately straightened to attention. "Miss Sanders," he greeted me, as if I were a regular patron rather than a diner waitress far out of her depth. "Mr. Romano is waiting for you in the private dining room. Please follow me." I was led through the main dining area, all crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, elegant patrons in evening wear, to a secluded door at the back. The maitre d' opened it to reveal a small, intimate dining room with a single table. Candles cast a warm glow over the space, and a wall of windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights below. And there was Vincent, standing as I entered. He wore a black suit that made his shoulders look even broader, the white of his shirt, a stark contrast against his olive skin. His dark eyes widened slightly as they took me in, a flash of approval, and something hotter making my cheeks warm. "Ellie," he said, moving forward to take my hand. "You look stunning." "Thank you," I murmured, suddenly self-conscious. "This place is beautiful. I'm glad you like it." He guided me to the table, pulling out my chair with old-world courtesy. As he took his seat opposite me, I noticed we were alone in the room. No waitstaff, no bodyguards, just the two of us, candlelight, and the glittering city beyond the glass. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Vince said, his eyes never leaving mine as he poured wine into my glass, a deep red that caught the candlelight like liquid rubies. "Neither was I admitted. His lips curved into that small smile that transformed his face, making him look younger, almost boyish. "Yet here you are." "Yet here I am," I echoed, taking a sip of the wine. It was exquisite, unlike anything I'd ever tasted, rich and complex. "I wanted to talk to you about your debt," he said, cutting straight to the point. "It's been taken care of." I set down my glass with a sharp click. "I didn't agree to that." "You didn't have to," he replied calmly. "It's done." "You can't just—" "I can," he interrupted gently. "And I did. Your father's medical bills, your student loans, the credit card debt, all of it." I stared at him, speechless. The amount was substantial, over $70,000 in total. Money I'd been struggling to pay off for 3 years, working myself to exhaustion. "Why?" I finally managed. Vince leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "Because I want you to be free, Ellie. Free to finish your degree, free to pursue your dreams, free of the burden your father left you." "You don't even know me," I whispered, echoing my words from earlier. "I know enough," he repeated, his voice dropping to that timbre that seemed to resonate in my bones. "I know that when those men threatened you last night, you didn't cower. You stood your ground, despite your fear. I know that you worked 2 jobs without complaint, supporting yourself and helping others despite your own struggles. I know that you have fire in you, Ellie Sanders. Fire that shouldn't be smothered by debt that isn't even yours." His words washed over me, more intoxicating than the wine. No one had ever seen me that way, as strong, as worthy of admiration. I'd been invisible for so long, just another struggling girl in a city full of them. "I can't accept this," I said, even as a part of me longed to. "It's too much, and I have no way to repay you." "I don't want repayment," Vince said. "I want your company." I blinked. "My company?" "Dinner. Conversation." His eyes held mine, dark and intent. "Nothing more than you're comfortable with, Ellie." Relief and something like disappointment mingled in my chest. "Just dinner?" "For now," he said, and the promise in those 2 words made my pulse quicken. The door opened then, and a waiter entered with our first course. Delicate scallops arranged like art on the plate. As he set them down and discreetly retreated, I realized this entire evening had been choreographed, from the private room to the perfectly timed service. "Tell me about yourself," Vince said as we began to eat. "Not the details I already know. Tell me what you want, your dreams, the future you see for yourself." No one had asked me that in a long time. I found myself talking more freely than I'd intended, describing my hopes of finishing my business degree, my vague plans of perhaps opening a small bakery someday. My mother had taught me to bake before she'd left, and it remained my one true passion. Vince listened with genuine interest, asking questions that revealed he was truly engaged. As the courses came and went, each more exquisite than the last, I found myself relaxing, the wine and his attention loosening something tight within me. "And what about you?" I finally asked. "What does Vincent Romano want from life?" A shadow passed over his face, so quickly I almost missed it. "What every man wants, I suppose. Success, security." His eyes met mine across the candlelight. Someone to share it with. The intensity of his gaze made heat pool low in my belly. I looked away, focusing on the city lights beyond the window. "And is that why I'm here? Because you're lonely? You're here because from the moment I saw you, I haven't been able to think of anything else." he said, his honesty catching me off guard. Because something about you calls to something in me, Ellie. I don't expect you to understand it. I barely do myself. I met his eyes again, searching for deception and finding none. This is crazy, I whispered. You know that, right? Normal people don't just claim strangers in grocery stores. They don't buy their debt or take them to exclusive restaurants after knowing them for a day. I've never claimed to be normal, he replied with a small shrug, and what happened between us wasn't normal either. You felt it too. Don't deny it. I couldn't deny it. From the moment he'd walked into Martin's grocery, something had shifted in my world, as if his presence had rearranged the very atoms around me. I'm not denying it, I said softly. I'm just trying to understand it. Some things defy understanding, Ellie. They simply are. Dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate souffle that melted on my tongue. As I savored it, I realized with a start that I was enjoying myself. More than that, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. When the meal concluded, Vince stood and offered his hand. There's something I want to show you. I placed my hand in his, allowing him to lead me from the private dining room, through a service corridor, and into an elevator. He pressed the button for the roof, his body close enough that I could feel his warmth, smell the subtle cologne that was becoming familiar. The elevator opened onto a rooftop garden, a hidden oasis above the city, with potted trees strung with tiny lights, flower beds releasing their fragrance into the night air, and a small reflecting pool that mirrored the stars above. This is beautiful, I breathed, taking it all in. Do all your restaurants have secret gardens? Just this one, Vince said, leading me to a bench near the pool. I come here sometimes to think, to escape. What does Vincent Romano need to escape from? I asked, genuinely curious. He was quiet for a long moment, his profile etched against the city lights. Expectations, responsibilities, the weight of the empire my father built and I inherited. For the first time, I glimpsed something beneath the powerful exterior, a man with burdens of his own, perhaps as heavy as mine in their own way. Is that why you helped me? I asked. Because you know what it's like to inherit someone else's legacy? His eyes found mine in the dim light, surprise evident in them. You're perceptive, Ellie, more than you know. Or maybe you're just not as mysterious as you think, I countered, surprising myself with my boldness. He laughed then, a genuine sound that transformed his face, erasing years and tension. Perhaps not with you. We sat in companionable silence for a while, the night air cool but pleasant. Eventually he checked his watch and sighed. It's getting late. I should take you home. A part of me didn't want the evening to end, but I nodded. Thank you for dinner, and for the debt, though I'm still not entirely comfortable with it. You will be, he said confidently, standing and offering his hand again, in time. The drive back to my apartment was quiet, a comfortable silence between us. This time, Vince accompanied me in the back seat, his presence filling the space with an energy I couldn't name. When Anthony pulled up in front of my building, Vince insisted on walking me to my door. This isn't necessary, I protested as we climbed the stairs. Humor me, he said again, his hand at the small of my back. At my door, I turned to face him, suddenly nervous. So, thank you again. My pleasure, he murmured, his eyes dropping to my lips for just a moment before returning to mine. When can I see you again? I'm working tomorrow, I said automatically. Both jobs. His jaw tightened. You don't need to work those jobs anymore, Ellie. Your debt is cleared. I still have rent to pay, and I like being independent. Something like admiration flickered in his eyes. Of course. But perhaps just one job would suffice? The diner, perhaps. It seems safer. I thought of Mike's fearful deference the night before. Did you speak to my manager at the grocery store? I did, Vince admitted without apology. Your safety is non-negotiable. I should have been angry at his interference, but instead I found myself touched by his concern. One job would give me more time for classes, I conceded. His smile was worth the compromise. Tomorrow evening, then? After your shift? I hesitated, then nodded. Okay, Vince stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup my cheek. My breath caught as he leaned in, but instead of kissing my lips, he pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead. "Good night, Ellie," he whispered, his breath warm against my skin. "Good night, Vince," I replied, my voice unsteady. I slipped inside my apartment, closing the door behind me. I leaned against it, listening to his retreating footsteps, my heart racing and my mind spinning with questions I couldn't answer. What was I doing? Who was this man who had entered my life like a storm, upending everything in a matter of days? And why, despite all the warning signs, did being with him feel so right? As I kicked off my heels and sank onto my couch, I realized with startling clarity that I was standing at a crossroads. Whatever happened next would change my life forever, and the most terrifying part was that I wanted it to. The next morning brought doubt with the dawn. In the harsh light of day, last night seemed like a dream. The private dining room, the rooftop garden, the way Vincent had looked at me as if I were precious. I'd been swept away by the fantasy, but reality had a way of reasserting itself. Who was I kidding? Men like Vincent Romano didn't fall for diner waitresses. There had to be an angle I wasn't seeing, an ulterior motive behind his interest. Yet when I checked my email, I found a notification from the hospital's billing department. "Your account has been paid in full." Similar messages waited from my student loan servicer and credit card company. It was real. Vincent Romano had erased my debt overnight, as casually as someone might buy a cup of coffee. The implications were dizzying. I was free, truly free, for the first time in years. I could finish my degree without the crushing anxiety of mounting interest. I could work one job instead of two. I could breathe. But nothing came without strings, regardless of what Vincent claimed. The question was, could I live with whatever those strings might be? I made my way to Rena's diner for my shift, keenly aware of the stares and whispers that followed me. Word had spread quickly about my dinner with Vincent, embellished with each retelling until I'd apparently left in his private helicopter for a weekend in Paris. "So," Margot said as I tied my apron, "you in the suit, huh?" "It was just dinner," I replied, feeling my cheeks warm. She raised an eyebrow. "Honey, men like that don't do just dinner with girls like us." Her words echoed my own doubts, but something stubborn in me rose to defend Vincent and myself. Maybe I'm not just a girl like us. Maybe he sees something more. Margot's expression softened. "Oh, sweetie, I hope you're right. Just be careful, okay? Men with power, they can give you the world with one hand and take everything with the other." I nodded, unable to argue with her wisdom. I will be. The morning passed in a blur of coffee refills and breakfast orders, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Twice, I caught sight of a black sedan parked across the street, a figure behind the wheel keeping a steady eye on the diner. One of Vincent's men, I was certain. Around noon, my phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "Lunch break? Look outside. V." My heart skipped as I peered through the window. The black Bentley idled at the curb, Vincent leaning against it in a charcoal suit that made heads turn. He looked up as if sensing my gaze, a smile curving his lips. "Taking my break," I called to Margot, who followed my gaze and shook her head in resigned amusement. The June air was warm as I stepped outside, suddenly conscious of my plain uniform and messy ponytail. Vincent didn't seem to notice, his eyes warming as they took me in. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, opening the car door to reveal a picnic basket on the seat. "You brought me lunch?" I couldn't hide my surprise. I did. No apology, no explanation, just that confident certainty that characterized everything about him. I slid into the car, and he joined me, closing the door to create our own private world. The basket contained gourmet sandwiches, fresh fruit, and tiny pastries that looked too perfect to eat. "You didn't have to do this," I said, even as I accepted the sandwich he offered. Prosciutto and fig on artisan bread, nothing like the hurried bites of diner food I usually managed on my breaks. "I wanted to," he replied simply. "How was your morning?" Something about the normalcy of the question made me smile. "Busy. Lots of curious stares after your visit yesterday." "Does that bother you?" There was a hint of possessiveness in his tone. I'm not used to being the center of attention, I admitted, or being associated with someone like you. Someone like me? He raised an eyebrow, a challenge in his eyes. I met his gaze directly. Someone powerful, dangerous. Do I frighten you, Ellie? He asked softly. Sometimes, I admitted. Not because I think you'd hurt me, but because of how you make me feel. His eyes darkened, and he reached out to brush a strand of hair from my face. And how is that? Like I'm standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. Like one step could change everything. Would that be so terrible? His voice was low, intimate in the confines of the car. I don't know yet, I whispered honestly. He smiled, seeming pleased with my answer. At least you're considering it. That's a start. We ate in companionable silence for a few moments, the food exquisite even in its simplicity. I found myself stealing glances at him, the strong line of his jaw, the way his hands moved with precise confidence, the occasional flash of vulnerability when he thought I wasn't looking. I checked my email this morning, I said finally, about the debt. And? His expression gave nothing away. Thank you, I said, the words inadequate for the magnitude of what he'd done. It changes everything. That was the intention. He reached for my hand, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm that sent shivers up my arm. I want to give you choices, Ellie. Options beyond exhaustion and survival. Why me? I had to ask. Of all the people you could help, why choose a random cashier? Something flickered in his eyes, a darkness, a memory. Perhaps I saw something of myself in you, fighting against circumstances not of your making, shouldering burdens that should never have been yours. For a moment, I glimpsed a different Vincent, not the powerful businessman or the dangerous figure from whispered rumors, but a man who understood struggle, who recognized the weight of inherited responsibility. What happened to your father? I asked impulsively. You mentioned inheriting his legacy. Vincent went still, his expression shuddering slightly. My father built an empire from nothing. He came to this country with empty pockets and burning ambition. Everything we have, he created through sheer force of will. A shadow passed over his face. And he expected his son to protect it at all costs. Is that what you're doing? Protecting his legacy? I'm building my own, he replied, something fierce in his tone. My father's methods were old-fashioned. I have a different vision. I wanted to ask more, to unravel the complex man beside me, but my break was nearly over. I should get back, I said reluctantly. Vincent nodded but made no move to open the door. I have meetings this afternoon, but I'd like to see you this evening. Let me send Anthony for you after your shift. It wasn't quite a question, but neither was it a command. There was room for me to refuse, though we both knew I wouldn't. Okay, I agreed. I'm done at 6. He smiled, that transformative expression that made him look younger, less guarded. Perfect. As he leaned in, I thought for a moment he might kiss me. Properly this time, not the chaste forehead kiss of the previous night. My lips parted instinctively, but he only brushed his thumb across my lower lip, his eyes darkening with intent. Until tonight, he murmured. I returned to the diner in a daze, my lips still tingling from his touch. Margot took one look at my face and sighed. You're in deep, aren't you, sweetie? I couldn't deny it. Whatever was happening between Vincent and me, I was already past the point of easy retreat. The afternoon dragged endlessly. I found myself watching the clock, anticipation building with each passing hour. By the time 6 o'clock approached, I was practically vibrating with nervous energy. I changed in the diner's cramped bathroom, swapping my uniform for a simple sundress I'd brought, white with small blue flowers, more casual than last night's attire but still pretty. I let my hair down, applied a touch of lipstick, and tried to calm my racing heart. Anthony was waiting outside precisely at 6, as punctual as his employer. He held the door with a respectful nod, his expression as impassive as ever. Where are we going? I asked as we pulled away from the curb. Mr. Romano's home, Anthony replied, his eyes meeting mine briefly in the rearview mirror. My pulse quickened. Vincent's home. not a restaurant or public place, but his private domain. The implications were impossible to ignore. We drove out of the city, the urban landscape giving way to lush suburbs and eventually a winding private road flanked by ancient oak trees. Security cameras were mounted discreetly at intervals, and when we reached a towering wrought iron gate, Anthony merely nodded to the guard who promptly opened it for us. The house, mansion, really, appeared through the trees, a modern structure of glass and stone that somehow complemented, rather than competed with its natural surroundings. Water features flanked the circular driveway, their gentle burbling creating an atmosphere of tranquility. Romano designed it himself, Anthony offered, surprising me with the voluntary information as he caught my wide-eyed stare. It's beautiful, I murmured, taking in the clean lines and expansive windows that reflected the early evening sky. Anthony led me to the front entrance, massive double doors of dark wood and frosted glass. Before he could open them, they swung inward to reveal Vincent, jacket off, sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms, his usual polished appearance slightly relaxed. "Ellie," he said, his eyes warming as they took me in. "Welcome." Anthony retreated silently as Vincent ushered me inside. The foyer opened into a great room with soaring ceilings and walls of glass that framed the surrounding woods. The decor was minimal but luxurious. Leather, steel, and warm woods, creating an atmosphere that was both masculine and inviting. "Your home is amazing," I said, turning slowly to take it all in. "I'm glad you like it." Vincent watched me with an intensity that made me self-conscious. "Would you like a tour?" He showed me through the main floor, a chef's kitchen, where a middle-aged woman was preparing something that smelled divine, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Each room was impeccably designed, beautiful, but not ostentatious. "Do you live here alone?" I asked as we moved to the rear of the house, where glass doors opened onto a stone terrace. "My staff lives in a separate wing," Vincent replied. "But yes, essentially, there was something lonely in the admission. This powerful man in his perfect, empty house. It must get quiet," I observed. He glanced at me, something vulnerable in his eyes. "It does. Though I've grown accustomed to it. No family? No girlfriend?" I ventured, immediately regretting the transparency of the question. Vincent's lips curved in a slight smile. "No girlfriend. My parents are deceased. I have a younger sister, Sophia, but she lives in Europe. We're not close." The hesitation told me there was a story there, but before I could ask, he gestured to the terrace. "Would you like to sit outside? The evening is pleasant." The terrace overlooked a stunning infinity pool that seemed to merge with the forest beyond. We settled on comfortable outdoor furniture, and a young man appeared silently with a tray of drinks. Something amber for Vincent, a delicate pink cocktail for me. "I hope you like gin," Vincent said, nodding toward my glass. "James makes an excellent elderflower spritz. The drink was perfect, light, floral, with just enough alcohol to ease my nerves without clouding my judgment." As the sun began its slow descent, casting golden light through the trees, I felt myself relaxing into the surreal experience of sitting with Vincent Romano in his private kingdom. "Why did you invite me here?" I asked finally, setting my empty glass aside. Vincent studied me, his dark eyes unreadable in the fading light. "Because I wanted you to see me, not just the man in the restaurant or the businessman in the car. Me, in my element." "And who is that?" I leaned forward, genuinely curious. "Who is Vincent Romano when no one's watching?" "A man with responsibilities," he replied after a moment. "A man with power he never particularly wanted but has learned to wield. A man who, until recently, had resigned himself to a certain kind of solitude." "Until recently?" I couldn't help asking, my heart quickening. His eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. "Until you." The simple declaration hung in the air between us, charged with meaning. I struggled to understand what he was offering, what he wanted from me. "Vincent," I began, my voice soft, I don't belong in this world. I'm just a waitress with too much student debt and a tiny apartment." "You belong wherever you choose to belong," he countered, leaning forward to take my hand. And you're far more than just anything, Ellie. The conviction in his voice made something in my chest tighten. What is this? Between us? I need to understand what you want. Everything, he said simply. I want to know you, Ellie. I want to protect you, to give you the world if you'll let me. I want to wake up with you, and fall asleep with you, and build something real in between. My breath caught. You barely know me. I know enough, he repeated, his mantra from our previous encounters. I know that from the moment I saw you standing your ground against those thugs. Something in me recognized something in you. Call it chemistry, fate, whatever you like. It doesn't change what I feel. And what's that? I whispered. Possessiveness, he admitted without shame. Fascination. Desire. His thumb traced circles on my palm. The certainty that you're meant to be mine. I should have been frightened by his intensity, but instead, I felt an answering call within me, a recognition of something primal and undeniable between us. I'm not a possession, I said, needing to establish that boundary. No, he agreed readily. You're a partner, an equal, but that doesn't change my desire to claim you, to protect what's mine. The word mine sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear. There was something darkly thrilling about being wanted so completely by a man like Vincent Romano. Dinner is ready, sir, a voice interrupted. The chef stood in the doorway, her expression professionally neutral. Vincent nodded, releasing my hand reluctantly. Thank you, Maria. He led me to a smaller, more intimate dining area than the formal room he'd shown me earlier. A table for two was set by windows overlooking a Japanese-inspired garden, illuminated by subtle lighting. Candles flickered on the table and soft music played from hidden speakers. This is beautiful, I murmured as he held my chair. I wanted tonight to be special, he replied, taking his seat across from me. Different from the restaurant. More personal, I observed. Yes. No pretense, no games. Just that direct honesty that was becoming familiar. Dinner was exquisite, a progression of small, perfectly executed courses that revealed Vincent's sophisticated palate. We talked easily, moving from topic to topic with a naturalness that belied our brief acquaintance. He told me more about his businesses, legitimate ones, carefully skirting anything that might hint at darker enterprises. I shared stories from my childhood, my dreams of opening a bakery, my relationship with my father before his gambling problem consumed him. He wasn't a bad man, I found myself explaining as we lingered over dessert, a delicate chocolate creation that melted on my tongue. Just weak, addicted. After Mom left, he spiraled. Weakness can be as destructive as malice, Vincent observed, his expression somber. Sometimes more so. You sound like you speak from experience. He was quiet for a moment. My father was not a weak man, but he had blind spots, vulnerabilities that others exploited. Is that how he died? I asked gently. Vincent's jaw tightened. He was murdered. A rival organization. I was 22, just finishing business school. My hand covered his instinctively. I'm so sorry. It was 10 years ago, he said, his voice carefully controlled. I've built something different since then. Something legitimate, sustainable. There it was. The first acknowledgement, however oblique, of his family's criminal past. I should have been frightened, should have made my excuses and left. Instead, I found myself drawn deeper into his world, fascinated by the complexities of the man across from me. And your mother? I asked. Died when I was 16, cancer. His expression softened with genuine grief. She was the heart of our family. After she was gone, my father became harder, colder. And you? I ventured. Did you become harder too? Vincent's eyes met mine, something vulnerable in their depths. I built walls. It seemed safer that way. And now? I whispered. Now I'm sitting across from a woman who makes me want to tear them down, he replied, his honesty disarming. And it terrifies me almost as much as it exhilarates me. After dinner, he led me through glass doors onto a private balcony overlooking the pool. The night air was cool but pleasant, stars visible through breaks in the trees. Vincent stood behind me, not quite touching, as I gazed out at the peaceful scene. Stay tonight, he said quietly, his voice close to my ear. My pulse jumped, and I turned to face him. Vincent. Not for that, he clarified, though the heat in his eyes belied his words. Not unless you want to. Just stay. Let me wake up knowing you're here. The vulnerability in the request caught me off guard. This powerful, dangerous man was asking, not commanding, not assuming, if I would simply remain in his orbit a little longer. I don't have anything with me, I hedged, though it wasn't a refusal. I can provide anything you need, he replied. Or Anthony can retrieve whatever you want from your apartment. The ease with which he solved practical problems was both impressive and slightly alarming. Did anything ever stand in Vincent Romano's way? Why is this so important to you? I asked, needing to understand. He considered me for a long moment, as if deciding how much truth to offer. I've never brought anyone here before, he finally said. Not like this. This house has always been separate. A fortress. And now? I prompted. Now, I want it to be a home, he said simply, and when I imagine that, I see you here. The admission stole my breath. It was too fast, too intense, yet it resonated with something deep inside me, a longing for belonging I'd never fully acknowledged. Vincent, we barely know each other, I said, my voice soft. This is unconventional, he supplied, impulsive, perhaps even reckless. His hands came up to frame my face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. But tell me you don't feel it too, Ellie, this connection between us. I couldn't lie. Not to him, not to myself. I feel it, I admitted. But it scares me. Good things often do, he murmured, his thumbs tracing my cheekbones. Stay tonight. Just to sleep. Let me hold you. Nothing more, I promise. The sincerity in his eyes undid me. Okay, I whispered, I'll stay. The smile that transformed his face was worth any risk, any uncertainty. He leaned forward, his forehead resting against mine for a moment in a gesture of surprising tenderness. Thank you, he said softly. He led me back inside, through corridors of his vast home, to a wing I hadn't seen before. The master suite was exactly what I might have expected. Spacious, masculine, elegant without being showy. A massive bed dominated one wall, facing windows that would offer stunning views by daylight. The bathroom's through there, Vincent said, gesturing to a door. You'll find everything you need. I can give you something to sleep in. He moved to a walk-in closet, returning with a soft t-shirt. It will be too big, but it should be comfortable. I accepted it, suddenly shy. Thank you. I'll give you privacy, he said, reading my discomfort. Join me downstairs when you're ready, perhaps a glass of wine before bed? I nodded, grateful for the space to collect myself. When he'd gone, I explored the bathroom, a marble and glass sanctuary with a shower that could fit 5 people and a soaking tub positioned to take advantage of the forest view. High-end toiletries lined the counter, and fluffy towels waited on heated racks. I showered quickly, letting the multiple jets wash away the last of my uncertainty. This was happening. I was staying the night with Vincent Romano, a man I'd known for all of 3 days, a man whose world was so far removed from mine it might as well be another planet. Yet it felt right in a way I couldn't explain, as if some part of me had been waiting for him without even knowing it. I pulled on his t-shirt, which fell to mid-thigh, and used the new toothbrush I found still in its packaging. My reflection showed a woman I barely recognized, eyes bright with something between excitement and fear, hair damp and curling around my shoulders, skin flushed from the hot shower and the heat of anticipation. Downstairs, I found Vincent in the library, a fire burning in the stone fireplace despite the warm June night. He'd changed into loose pants and a simple black t-shirt that revealed the muscular definition of his arms. He looked up as I entered, his eyes darkening as they took in my bare legs and damp hair. You're beautiful, he said simply, rising to hand me a glass of wine. So are you, I replied without thinking, then blushed at my own boldness. His smile was slow and pleased. Come. Sit with me. We settled on a comfortable leather sofa facing the fire, close but not touching. The wine was exceptional, of course. Everything in Vincent's world seemed designed for maximum pleasure and comfort. Tell me something no one else knows about you, I said impulsively, drawing my legs up beneath me. Vincent considered the question, his profile strong in the firelight. "I paint," he finally said, abstract mostly. "Nothing good enough to share, but it centers me." The admission surprised and delighted me. "I'd love to see your work sometime." He glanced at me, vulnerability flashing briefly in his eyes. "Perhaps. Someday." He sipped his wine. "Your turn." I thought for a moment. I talk to my plants, full conversations, not just encouragement. I tell them about my day, ask their advice on problems. I smiled self-consciously. "They're excellent listeners." Vincent laughed. A warm, genuine sound that made something in my chest expand. "I can imagine you doing that. It's charming." "It's weird," I countered, but I was smiling too. "Weird can be charming," he replied, setting his empty glass aside. "Especially on you." The air between us seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken desire. Vincent reached out slowly, giving me time to retreat, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered, tracing the line of my jaw. "I want to kiss you," he said, his voice low and rough. "I've wanted to since the moment I saw you." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What's stopping you?" His eyes darkened. "The promise I made. Just sleep," I said. "Nothing more." I set my glass down deliberately, then shifted closer to him. "Maybe I want more," I whispered. Vincent went still, his control visibly tightening. "Ellie," he said, my name a warning and a plea. "If I start, I may not be able to stop." "I trust you," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. Despite everything, despite how little I truly knew him, I did trust Vincent Romano, at least with this, with my body, with my desire. He searched my face, looking for any sign of hesitation. Finding none, he leaned forward, one hand cupping my cheek as his lips finally met mine. The kiss began gently, a question, an exploration. But when I sighed against his mouth, something broke in him. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me against his chest as the kiss deepened, became hungry, demanding. I responded with equal fervor, my fingers tangling in his hair, my body arching into his. Vincent groaned, the sound vibrating through me. "Ellie," he murmured against my lips. "My Ellie." The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed me, but instead, it sent heat pooling low in my belly. I wanted to be his, wanted to belong to this man in ways that defied rational thought. His hands slid down my sides, finding the hem of the borrowed t-shirt. "Tell me you want this," he demanded, his voice rough with desire. "Tell me you want me." "I want you," I breathed, the truth of it undeniable. "I've wanted you since you walked into that grocery store." It was all the permission he needed. His mouth claimed mine again as his hands explored, discovering what made me gasp, what made me tremble. When he finally lifted me into his arms, carrying me back upstairs to his bedroom, I went willingly, eagerly, all doubts forgotten in the heat of desire. In his bed, Vincent was both tender and commanding, his touch reverent yet possessive. "Mine," he whispered against my skin, again and again, as if imprinting the word into my very being. And I responded in kind, claiming him with my hands and lips, discovering the power I held over this dangerous, beautiful man. Afterward, as we lay tangled in his sheets, my head on his chest and his arms around me, Vincent pressed a kiss to my temple. "Stay," he murmured. "Not just tonight. Stay with me, Ellie." I knew he meant more than just another day. He was offering me his world, beautiful, dangerous, complex. A world I barely understood, but already craved. "I have my apartment," I said, practical even in this dreamlike moment. "My job, my classes. Keep them all if you want," he replied, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. "Or let them go. It's your choice. But make this your home too. Make me your home." The offer was tempting beyond words. Safety, luxury, belonging. And Vincent himself, this man who looked at me as if I were the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. "Can I think about it?" I asked, not ready to commit to something so monumental, so life-changing. "Of course." He pressed another kiss to my hair. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. As I drifted toward sleep in Vincent Romano's arms, I knew that whatever I decided, nothing would ever be the same. I'd crossed a threshold, entered a world of both shadow and light, danger and protection, and somewhere deep inside, I already knew I'd never want to leave. Morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting Vincent's bedroom in a warm glow. I woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar softness of the mattress beneath me, the silky sheets against my skin. Then the memories of the previous night flooded back. Vincent's hands on my body, his mouth against mine, the way he'd whispered my name like a prayer. I turned to find him watching me, already awake, propped on one elbow. His dark hair was tousled from sleep, a shadow of stubble along his jaw making him look younger, less polished than the man who'd walked into Martin's grocery 3 days ago. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years," I admitted, feeling strangely shy despite our intimacy the night before. His fingers traced the curve of my shoulder, leaving goosebumps in their wake. "Any regrets?" I considered the question seriously, searching my feelings for any hint of remorse or uncertainty. "No," I said finally, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. "No regrets." The smile that transformed his face was worth any doubt, any fear I might have harbored. He leaned forward to press a kiss to my forehead, then my lips, gentle, almost reverent. "I have meetings this morning," he said reluctantly, "but I've told Anthony to clear my afternoon. Stay. Let me come back to you." The request was simple yet loaded with meaning. Stay. Not just in his bed or his house, but in his life. The decision felt monumental, a fork in the road with no possibility of return. I should check on my apartment, I hedged. Water my plants. They'll be worried about me. Vincent's lips curved, remembering my confession from the night before. "Of course. Anthony can take you home, then bring you back here for lunch, if you want." He left the choice to me, though I could see how much he wanted me to say yes. "Okay," I agreed softly. Lunch would be nice. The relief in his eyes was palpable. He kissed me once more, deeper this time, before reluctantly pulling away. "I need to shower and dress. Make yourself comfortable. The kitchen staff will make you whatever you'd like for breakfast." After he'd gone, I lay in his bed for a few minutes longer, trying to reconcile the whirlwind of the past few days, from struggling waitress to the bed of Vincent Romano in less than a week. It seemed impossible, surreal. Yet the warmth lingering on my skin, the pleasant ache in my body, were undeniably real. I showered in his palatial bathroom, then dressed in my sundress from the night before. It felt strangely inadequate now, this simple cotton garment among the luxury of Vincent's home. I found him in the kitchen, impeccable in a tailored suit, drinking espresso while scrolling through messages on his phone. He looked up as I entered, his eyes warming. "There you are," he said, setting aside his phone to give me his full attention. "Are you hungry?" The kitchen staff appeared as if summoned telepathically, offering a breakfast spread that would have fed a small army. Fresh pastries, fruit, eggs prepared 3 ways, artisanal bread, and coffee that smelled divine. "This is too much," I protested weakly, as Vincent pulled out a chair for me at the kitchen island. "Get used to it," he replied with a small smile. "Maria believes in being prepared for any possible preference." The older woman nodded, pleased by his acknowledgement. "Mr. Romano never eats enough breakfast," she confided to me. "Perhaps you will be a good influence." The easy acceptance of my presence in Vincent's home, as if I belonged there, as if I were already part of his life rather than an overnight guest, was both disconcerting and strangely comforting. We ate together, Vincent watching with evident pleasure as I savored the perfectly prepared food. When his phone vibrated with an incoming call, he glanced at it with a frown. "I need to take this," he said apologetically. "Business that can't wait." I nodded, understanding. "Go ahead. I'll be fine." He pressed a kiss to my temple before answering the call, his voice immediately shifting to a more commanding tone as he moved toward his office. I caught fragments, something about a shipment, a customs issue, a competitor trying to undercut their position. Nothing explicitly illegal, but the edges of conversations that hinted at operations beyond simple business transactions. After he'd gone, I finished my coffee in thoughtful silence. Maria bustled around the kitchen, occasionally casting curious glances my way but respecting my privacy. I wondered what she thought of me. This ordinary woman suddenly appearing in her employer's life. In his bed, Anthony found me there, his expression as impassive as ever. "Mr. Romano asked me to drive you home whenever you're ready, miss." The formality felt strange after the intimacy of the night before. "Thank you, Anthony. I'm ready now." The drive back to my apartment was surreal. The sleek Bentley gliding through my rundown neighborhood like an alien spacecraft. Neighbors peered from windows, curious about the luxury vehicle and its tinted windows. I felt their stares as Anthony opened my door, escorting me to my building entrance with the same silent efficiency he showed his employer. "Mr. Romano will send me for you at noon," he said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. I nodded, still unable to fully process the rapid changes in my life. "Thank you, Anthony." My apartment felt smaller than I remembered. The furniture shabbier, the water stain on the ceiling more pronounced. After the pristine luxury of Vincent's home, my carefully curated space, once my sanctuary, seemed pathetically inadequate. I pushed away the uncharitable thought, reminding myself that this was my home, built with my own hard work and determination. I watered my plants as promised, telling them in whispered tones about the extraordinary turn my life had taken. "You wouldn't believe his house," I told the struggling fern by the window. "And he wants me to stay there, with him. What do you think? Am I crazy for even considering it?" The fern, unsurprisingly, offered no opinion. I showered again and changed into fresh clothes. A pale blue sundress that was one of my favorites, simple but flattering. Then I sat on my couch, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of my new reality. Vincent Romano wanted me in his life, in his home, in his bed. Vincent Romano, who could have any woman he wanted, had chosen me, Ellie Sanders, diner waitress and part-time cashier, daughter of a failed gambler and an absent mother. It made no sense, yet the evidence was undeniable. The way he looked at me, touched me, spoke to me. My phone chimed with a text message. "Missing you already. Can't wait for lunch. V." Such a normal message, like any new lover might send, yet coming from him it felt momentous. I typed a response. "Missing you too. See you soon." The simplicity of the exchange belied the complexity of our situation. I was falling for Vincent Romano, falling hard and fast into uncharted territory, and I had no idea if there would be a safe landing or if I was destined to crash and burn. At precisely noon, Anthony arrived as promised. He raised an eyebrow slightly at the small overnight bag I carried, the only acknowledgement of what it signified, and held the car door with his usual silent efficiency. Vincent was waiting on the terrace when we arrived. His suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to expose strong forearms. He looked up from his laptop as I approached, his entire being seeming to lighten at the sight of me. He rose immediately, coming to meet me, his hands warm on my waist as he bent to kiss me. "You came back," he murmured against my lips, as if he genuinely feared I might not. "I said I would," I replied, touched by the vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. He gestured to the bag in my hand, his eyes questioning. "You're staying?" "For tonight," I clarified, not quite ready to commit to more despite the pull I felt toward him. "If that's still okay." "More than okay," he assured me, taking the bag and setting it aside. "I had lunch prepared for us out here." "I thought you might enjoy the view." The view was spectacular. The infinity pool shimmering in the midday sun, the forest beyond vibrant with summer green. But it was Vincent himself who captured my attention. The way the sunlight highlighted the angles of his face, the way his eyes followed my every movement, as if cataloging each expression, each gesture. Lunch was a light affair. Fresh salads, cold soup, crusty bread with imported olive oil. We talked easily, about nothing and everything. My online classes, his legitimate business interests, books we'd both read, places we'd like to visit. It felt normal, almost domestic, this shared meal in the sunlight. After we'd eaten, Vincent led me to a cushioned lounge chair large enough for two, pulling me against his chest as we reclined together. "This is nice," he murmured into my hair. "Just being with you." "It is," I agreed, relaxing into his embrace. "Though I imagine it's quite different from your usual afternoon activities." His chest rumbled with a low laugh. "Very different. Much better." We stayed like that for a while, the warm sun and the gentle rhythm of Vincent's heartbeat lulling me into a peaceful doze. I woke to the sensation of his fingers combing through my hair, his breathing steady beneath my cheek. "Tell me about your bakery dream," he said quietly. "What would it look like? Where would it be?" I smiled against his chest, surprised he'd remembered that detail from our earlier conversations. "Nothing fancy. A small storefront in a neighborhood with good foot traffic, display cases with pastries and bread, maybe a few tables where people could enjoy coffee and something sweet. I'd want it to feel warm, inviting. Somewhere people would return to again and again. What would you call it?" I hesitated, then admitted, "Sweetness and light. It's what my mom used to call me when I was little before she left." Vincent's arms tightened around me. "I like that. It suits you. It's just a dream," I said, tempering my own enthusiasm. "Commercial space in this city is expensive, and startup costs for a bakery are significant. Equipment, inventory, staff. I could help with that," he offered, his voice careful, as if aware he was treading on sensitive ground. "If you'd let me." I sat up to look at him, needing to see his face. "Vincent, I can't take more from you. The debt was already too much." "It's not taking if I'm offering freely," he countered, his expression earnest. "I have resources, Ellie. Let me use them for something that would make you happy." I'd never know if I succeeded because of my own merit, or because Vincent Romano smoothed the path, I explained, trying to make him understand. "I need to do this myself when I'm ready." Instead of arguing, Vincent surprised me with a smile of genuine admiration. "Your independence is one of the things I adore about you, but remember that accepting help doesn't diminish your accomplishments." I leaned forward to kiss him, touched by his understanding. "Thank you. Maybe someday I'll take you up on that offer." But not yet. The rest of the afternoon passed in lazy contentment. Vincent showed me more of his property. The Japanese garden I'd glimpsed from the dining room, a small orchard of apple and pear trees, a vegetable garden that supplied the kitchen with fresh produce. It was a peaceful oasis, far removed from the dangers and complexities I knew existed in his world. As evening approached, Vincent received a call that made his expression darken. He excused himself, moving away to speak in low, rapid Italian that I couldn't understand. When he returned, the easy warmth of the afternoon had been replaced by a tension that radiated from him in almost palpable waves. "I have to go out," he said, his jaw tight. "Business that can't wait. I'm sorry." "It's okay," I assured him, though disappointment curled in my stomach. "I understand." He cupped my face in his hands, his eyes searching mine. "I won't be long. A few hours at most. Make yourself at home. Maria will prepare dinner whenever you're hungry." "Be careful," I said impulsively, some instinct telling me that whatever business required his attention wasn't entirely safe. Something flashed in his eyes, surprise perhaps at my concern. "Always," he promised, bending to kiss me with an intensity that left me breathless. "I'll come back to you, Ellie." After he'd gone, the massive house felt emptier, colder despite the warm evening. I wandered aimlessly for a while, exploring rooms we hadn't visited during the tour. A home theater with plush seating, a fully equipped gym, a wine cellar that would make a sommelier weep with envy. In the library, I found a section of books on baking and pastry arts, some so specialized they could only have been sourced from professional culinary schools. Had Vincent acquired these for me? The thought was both touching and slightly unsettling. Evidence of his determination, his certainty that I would become a fixture in his life. I selected one on French patisserie techniques and curled up on the leather sofa, losing myself in descriptions of delicate laminated doughs and precise temperature controls. Evening faded into night, and still Vincent didn't return. Maria brought a tray with dinner, a simple but elegant pasta dish, bread, and a glass of wine, which I ate in the library, the book still open beside me. By 11 o'clock, concern had begun to gnaw at me. Where was he? What kind of business kept him out so late? I tried not to imagine worst-case scenarios: police raids, rival gangs, violence I'd only seen in movies. Vincent was careful, controlled. He wouldn't put himself at unnecessary risk. Would he? I must have dozed off on the sofa because I woke to gentle hands lifting me. Vincent cradled me against his chest, carrying me up the stairs to his bedroom as if I weighed nothing. "You're back," I murmured sleepily, breathing in his familiar scent, now mingled with something sharper. Cigarette smoke. Though I'd never seen him smoke, and the metallic tang of something I didn't want to identify. "I told you I would be," he replied, his voice low and soothing. "I'm sorry I was gone so long." He laid me on the bed with tender care, then disappeared into the bathroom. I heard the shower running, and when he emerged some time later, his hair was damp, and he wore only loose pajama pants riding low on his hips. In the dim light, I could make out scars I hadn't noticed before. A jagged line across his ribs, a puckered circle on his shoulder that could only be a bullet wound. "Vincent," I said, more awake now. "What happened tonight?" He hesitated, conflict evident in his expression, the desire to be honest warring with the need to protect me from certain truths. "A disagreement with a former associate," he said finally, sliding into bed beside me. "It's resolved now. Are you hurt?" I asked, my eyes searching what I could see of his body for fresh injuries. "No," he assured me, pulling me against his chest. "I'm fine, Ellie. Everything is fine now." I wanted to press for more details, to understand exactly what kind of man I was falling for, but exhaustion pulled at me. Vincent's steady heartbeat beneath my ear and his warm arms around me created a cocoon of safety that belied the dangers I knew lurked beyond these walls. "Sleep," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my hair. "I've got you." And despite everything, the unanswered questions, the hints of violence, the strangeness of my new reality, I did sleep, deeply and dreamlessly, secure in Vincent Romano's embrace. Morning brought sunshine and the scent of coffee. I opened my eyes to find Vincent sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed in another impeccable suit, a mug in his hands. "Good morning," he said, offering the coffee. "I thought you might need this." I sat up, accepting the mug gratefully. "Thank you." "What time is it?" "Just after 8. I have meetings, but I wanted to see you before I left." As the fog of sleep cleared, I remembered the previous night, his late return, the scent of smoke and something metallic, the scars I'd glimpsed on his body. In the light of day, my concerns resurfaced. "Vincent," I began carefully. "About last night," his expression closed slightly. A subtle shift that might have been imperceptible to someone who hadn't studied his face as I had. "What about it?" "I need to know what I'm getting into here," I said, setting the coffee aside. "With you. With whatever business took you away last night." He was quiet for a long moment, weighing his response. "My world isn't always clean, Ellie. There are complications. History that can't be erased overnight." "I understand that," I said, though in truth I wasn't sure I did, not fully. "But if I'm going to be part of your life, I need to know what that means. What risks I'm taking, what compromises I might have to make." Vincent took my hand, his expression solemn. "I'm working to legitimize everything. Investments, real estate, import, export, legal enterprises that can sustain what my father built without the methods he employed." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "But there are still connections that can't be severed immediately. People who knew my father, who expect certain things from his son." "Like what?" I pressed, needing specifics rather than vague allusions. He sighed, seemingly making a decision. "Protection money from businesses in certain neighborhoods, arrangements with dock workers and customs officials to facilitate imports, agreements with other organizations about territory and operations." It was more candid than I'd expected, and the reality of it settled heavily in my stomach. Vincent Romano wasn't just a successful businessman. He was the head of an organization with deep roots in organized crime. "Have you ever—" I started, then paused, unsure how to phrase the question. "Killed someone?" He finished for me, his voice gentle despite the brutal directness of the words. "Yes, Ellie. When necessary. To protect myself, my people, my interests." I should have been horrified. I should have gotten up, gathered my things, and walked away from this dangerous man and his complicated world. Instead, I found myself oddly calm, processing this confirmation of what I'd already suspected. "Would you ever ask me to be involved in that side of things?" I asked. "Never," he said immediately, his tone fierce. "That part of my life would remain entirely separate from you. You would be protected, insulated from all of it. A beautiful bird in a gilded cage." I mused, not entirely comfortable with the image. Vincent's eyes darkened. "Not a cage, Ellie. Never that. You would be free to come and go as you please, to build your bakery, to live your life. My protection doesn't mean your imprisonment." I believed him, or wanted to, which amounted to the same thing in that moment. "And what happens if someone tries to get to you through me?" His expression hardened, a glimpse of the dangerous man beneath the polished exterior. "They would regret it. Deeply and permanently." A shiver ran through me, not entirely from fear. There was something primal and compelling about this man who would destroy anyone who threatened what was his. And I was becoming his, whether I fully admitted it or not. "I need time," I said finally, "to process all of this, to decide if I can live in your world, with all its complications." Vincent nodded, acceptance and determination mingling in his expression. "Take all the time you need, but know this, Ellie. I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe, to make you happy, to be worthy of you." He leaned forward to kiss me, a gentle press of lips that conveyed more than words could have. Then he rose, straightening his already perfect suit. "I'll be in meetings most of the day. Anthony will be available if you need anything. And Ellie?" I looked up at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who had upended my life in less than a week. "I'm falling in love with you," he said simply, the words hanging in the air between us like a tangible thing. "I think I began falling the moment I saw you." Before I could respond, before I could process the enormity of the admission, he was gone, leaving me alone with his declaration and my conflicted heart. I spent the day in a state of emotional tumult, alternating between rational analysis of my situation and breathless remembrance of Vincent's touch, his voice, his eyes when he'd confessed his feelings. I wandered his vast home, trying to imagine myself living there permanently, waking in his bed each morning, sharing meals in the sunny kitchen, perhaps eventually filling the silent rooms with children's laughter. The fantasy was seductive, but reality kept intruding. Vincent Romano's world included darkness I could scarcely comprehend. Violence, illegal activities, enemies who would view me as a vulnerability to exploit. Could I accept that? Could I build a life with him knowing what lurked beneath the surface of his legitimate businesses? By evening, I'd reached no clear conclusion. Vincent returned home earlier than the previous night, finding me in the library once again, surrounded by baking books. His face softened at the sight, tension draining from his shoulders as he crossed the room to kiss me. "I missed you today," he murmured against my lips. "I missed you too," I admitted, surprised by how true it was. In just a few days, Vincent had become a gravitational force in my life, the center around which my thoughts orbited. We ate dinner together in the smaller dining room, candles flickering between us as we discussed his day, the legitimate parts, at least, and my explorations of his home. There was an undercurrent of tension, both from his earlier confession and my unspoken decision about my place in his life. After dinner, he led me to his study, a room I hadn't seen before, with walls of dark wood and a massive desk that looked like it had witnessed generations of Romano business dealings. "I have something for you," Vincent said, reaching into a drawer to retrieve a small velvet box. "A gift." My heart stuttered. "Vincent, it's not what you're thinking," he said with a small smile, handing me the box, "though that conversation will come in time." I opened it with trembling fingers to find a key. Modern, electronic, nestled on black velvet. "What is this for?" I asked, though I suspected I knew. This house, he replied, watching my reaction carefully. For when you're ready, if you decide to stay to be with me, you should be able to come and go freely. This is your key. Your home, if you want it to be. The gesture was both practical and deeply symbolic, an offer of freedom within the context of belonging to him. I closed my hand around the key, feeling its weight, its significance. Thank you, I said softly. I'm still thinking about everything. But this means a lot. Vincent nodded, understanding in his eyes. Take all the time you need, Ellie. I meant what I said this morning. I'm falling in love with you. That doesn't change whether you're here or in your apartment across town. Later, in his bed, with moonlight spilling across our tangled limbs, I traced the scar on his ribs with gentle fingers. How did you get this? Vincent caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. A disagreement when I was 24. Early in my leadership, when I was still proving myself. And this? I touched the puckered circle on his shoulder. A rival who thought my father's death left an opportunity, he said, his voice matter of fact. He was mistaken. I absorbed this, trying to reconcile the gentle lover who held me with the dangerous man who had survived these violent encounters. How many enemies do you have? Fewer than my father had, he replied thoughtfully. I've worked to resolve old conflicts, establish new alliances, but enough that I take precautions, like the security I've seen around the property? The bodyguards? Yes. And other measures you haven't seen. His fingers combed through my hair, a soothing gesture. Does it frighten you? A little, I admitted, but not in the way you might think. I'm not afraid of you, Vincent. I'm afraid of losing you, of being caught in the crossfire of your world. He pulled me closer, his embrace fierce and protective. I would die before I let anything happen to you, Ellie. You have to know that. That's what terrifies me, I whispered against his chest, the thought of you putting yourself at risk for me. We fell silent, the weight of unspoken fears and possibilities hanging between us. Eventually, Vincent's breathing deepened, his arms loosening slightly as sleep claimed him. I remained awake, watching the play of moonlight across his face, memorizing each plane and angle. I'm falling in love with you too, I whispered to his sleeping form, testing the words I hadn't been brave enough to say earlier. And it terrifies me. The next morning, I woke to find Vincent already gone, a note on his pillow. Early meeting. Back by noon. Think about lunch in the city? V. I showered and dressed in yesterday's clothes, feeling increasingly aware of my limited wardrobe in comparison to Vincent's world. If I was going to spend more time here, I would need to bring more of my belongings, a small step toward the larger decision that loomed before me. I was sipping coffee in the kitchen when Maria approached, her expression hesitant. Miss Ellie, there is someone at the gate for you. A woman. She says she's a friend from the diner. Surprise and confusion washed through me. How would anyone from the diner know where to find me? Did she give a name? Margot, Maria replied. She says it's urgent. Margot, the cook who had warned me about men like Vincent. What could be so urgent that she'd tracked me to his home? I'll see her, I decided, setting down my coffee. Where is she? Security has brought her to the front entrance. I made my way to the massive front doors, anxiety building with each step. When I opened them, I found Margot standing in the foyer, looking uncomfortable and out of place in her practical clothes among the luxury of Vincent's home. Ellie, she said, relief evident in her voice. Thank goodness. I wasn't sure they'd let me see you. Margot, what are you doing here? How did you even find this place? She glanced nervously at the security guard who stood discreetly nearby. Can we talk privately? I nodded, leading her to a small sitting room off the main entrance. When the door closed behind us, Margot turned to me, her expression grave. You need to be careful, Ellie. Do you have any idea who Vincent Romano really is? I sank onto a couch, suddenly weary. I know enough, Margot. Do you? She leaned forward, her voice urgent. Because 3 men came into the diner last night asking questions about you. Questions about your relationship with Romano. Alarm prickled along my spine. What kind of questions? How long you've known him, whether you're living with him, if you ever mentioned family or friends who might be important to you. She shook her head. They weren't friendly, Ellie. They were gathering information, and not for a surprise party. My mouth went dry. Did you tell them anything? Of course not. But they'll find someone who will. She sat beside me, taking my hands in hers. I know it's not my business, but I care about you, kid. Whatever's happening between you and Romano. It's painting a target on your back. I closed my eyes, the reality I'd been trying to ignore crashing down around me. Vincent had enemies who now saw me as a way to hurt him. Thank you for telling me, I said, squeezing her hands. I'll be careful, and I'll talk to Vincent about it. You should come back with me, Margot urged. Back to your apartment, your normal life, before you get in any deeper. For a moment I was tempted. Return to my small apartment, my 2 jobs, my online classes. Return to safety, to anonymity, to being invisible again. But the thought of never seeing Vincent again, never feeling his arms around me, never witnessing that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face, it created a hollow ache in my chest that I couldn't ignore. I can't, I said softly. Not yet. Margot sighed, disappointment and concern mingling in her expression. I was afraid you'd say that. Just be careful, Ellie. And if you ever need help, if you ever want out, you call me, day or night. She scribbled her number on a scrap of paper, pressing it into my hand with a fierce look that brooked no argument. After she'd gone, escorted back to the gate by the same security guard who'd brought her in, I sat in the silent room, her warnings echoing in my mind. I needed to talk to Vincent. I needed to understand exactly what risks I was taking by being with him, by being seen as his. I needed to decide, once and for all, if I could accept those risks, if what we were building together was worth the danger that came with it. When the front door opened 2 hours later, I was waiting in the foyer. Margot's crumpled note still clutched in my hand. Vincent's smile at seeing me faded quickly as he registered my expression. What's wrong? He asked, crossing to me in 3 long strides. Ellie, what happened? We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. About us. About what it means for me to be with you. About the people who came to the diner asking questions about me last night. His expression darkened dangerously, a muscle ticking in his jaw. Who came to the diner? He demanded, his voice low and controlled. Tell me everything. And so I did, watching as Vincent's face became a mask of cold fury. When I finished, he pulled out his phone, barking orders in rapid Italian. I caught names, locations, instructions that sounded ominous, even in a language I didn't understand. When he ended the call, he turned to me, his eyes blazing with a rage that would have terrified me if I didn't know it wasn't directed at me. No one threatens what's mine, he said, his voice like ice. No one. I'm not yours yet, I reminded him, needing to establish that boundary. I haven't decided. Vincent's expression softened marginally. You're right. I apologize. He took a deep breath, visibly reining in his anger. But whether you've decided to be with me or not, the fact that people believe you're important to me puts you at risk, and that is unacceptable. What are you going to do? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. Send a message, he replied grimly. One that will ensure no one thinks of using you to get to me ever again. A chill ran through me at the implications. Vincent, I don't want anyone hurt because of me. Not because of you, he corrected, his voice gentle despite the steel beneath it. Because of their own poor choices. Because they thought they could threaten what I care about without consequences. He stepped closer, cupping my face in his hands. I meant what I said yesterday, Ellie. I'm falling in love with you, and I will do whatever is necessary to protect you. Always. In that moment, looking into his eyes, fierce, determined, filled with an emotion I couldn't deny, I made my decision. For better or worse, my life was now entwined with Vincent Romano's. The dangers, the complications, the shadows of his world. I would accept them all, because the alternative, living without him, had become unthinkable in the span of a single week. I'm falling in love with you too, I whispered, the admission both terrifying and liberating. And I want to stay, here, With you, whatever that means, whatever risks it brings. I choose you, Vincent. The mask of cold fury melted away, replaced by a joy so pure, so unguarded, it transformed him. He pulled me against him, his kiss desperate and tender all at once, as if he could pour all his emotions into this single connection. I will make you happy, he vowed against my lips. I will keep you safe. I will build a life with you that makes all of this worthwhile, Ellie. I swear it. And standing there in his arms, in the palatial foyer of a home that would now be mine as well, I believed him. Despite the dangers, despite the shadows that would always lurk at the edges of our life together, I believed that Vincent Romano would move heaven and earth to fulfill that promise. I had made my choice. I had stepped off the edge into the vast unknown, and somehow, impossibly, it felt like coming home. 6 months later, the ring on my finger caught the morning light as I reached for my coffee mug. The emerald-cut diamond was substantial without being ostentatious, flanked by smaller diamonds set in platinum, elegant, valuable, yet somehow understated, much like the man who had placed it there 3 months earlier. "You're up early," Vincent observed, entering the kitchen in his workout clothes, a light sheen of sweat glistening on his skin. He bent to kiss me, his hand automatically finding its place at the small of my back, a gesture so familiar now, so comforting in its consistency. "Nervous energy," I admitted. "Today's the big day." His smile was warm, proud. Sweetness and light opens its doors. The city won't know what hit it. I laughed, the sound still tinged with disbelief at how quickly my life had transformed. 6 months ago, I had been a waitress and part-time cashier, drowning in debt, struggling through online classes. Now I was engaged to Vincent Romano, living in our beautiful home, and about to open my own bakery in one of the city's most desirable shopping districts. The bakery had been my line in the sand, the one thing I insisted on doing myself without Vincent's financial support. He had respected my decision, though I knew it frustrated him to watch me secure a small business loan, negotiate with suppliers, and worry over startup costs when he could have eliminated those struggles with a single phone call. What he had done, however, was use his connections to help me find the perfect location. A charming storefront with large windows and excellent foot traffic, previously occupied by a bookstore that had relocated to larger premises. The landlord had been surprisingly accommodating about renovations, and permits that typically took months to process had materialized with remarkable speed. I suspected Vincent's influence behind these coincidences, but I didn't press the issue. We had established boundaries in our relationship, areas where his world and mine could overlap, and lines that shouldn't be crossed. My bakery existed in that gray area, built with my own determination and hard work, but gently facilitated by Vincent's invisible hand. "What time is Maria coming to the house?" Vincent asked, pouring himself coffee. "Around 10. We need to finalize the guest list for the engagement party." I glanced at him. "Unless you've changed your mind about having it here." "I haven't," he assured me. "I want people to see our home, to see us together. No more shadows, no more hiding." It was a significant shift from the early days of our relationship, when Vincent had been intensely protective, keeping me separate from his business associates and social connections. The message he'd sent after Margot's warning visit had apparently been received clearly. There had been no further inquiries about me at the diner, no sense of being watched or followed. Over time, Vincent had gradually introduced me to his world, carefully at first, testing the waters with small dinner parties, where I met his legitimate business partners and their spouses, then larger events, charity galas where the Romano name opened doors and commanded respect. Through it all, Vincent kept me close, his hand always at my back, his eyes frequently seeking mine across crowded rooms, as if to ensure I was comfortable, happy, secure. The engagement had come on a quiet evening 3 months ago, not with a grand gesture or public spectacle, but with Vincent kneeling beside me on our terrace, the stars overhead, and the scent of night-blooming jasmine in the air. His proposal had been simple, direct, like the man himself, a promise of protection, partnership, and passion for as long as we both lived. I had said yes without hesitation. my earlier fears about his world subsumed by the certainty that whatever challenges we faced, we would face them together. "I should get going," I said, glancing at the clock. "I want to be there when the staff arrives for final training." Vincent set down his coffee mug to pull me into his arms, his kiss more thorough than the casual greeting earlier. "I'll be there at noon," he promised, "with lunch for everyone." "You don't have to do that," I protested weakly, though I was touched by the gesture. "I want to." He replied simply, "This is important to you, which makes it important to me." Another boundary we'd established. Vincent would never set foot in the bakery during business hours. His presence would inevitably change the atmosphere, make customers uncomfortable or overly curious. Sweetness and Light needed to succeed or fail on its own merits, not because of its connection to the Romano name. But today was different. Today was a private training day before tomorrow's grand opening, and Vincent wanted to show his support for me and for the small staff I'd assembled. A pastry chef with formal training to complement my self-taught skills, 2 baristas to handle the coffee service, and a front-of-house manager to keep everything running smoothly when I needed to focus on baking. I kissed him once more, then grabbed my purse and the tote bag containing my chef's whites. "See you at noon," I said, already mentally reviewing my to-do list for the day. Anthony was waiting by the car, as punctual and impassive as ever. In the 6 months I'd lived with Vincent, I'd come to understand that Anthony was more than just a driver. He was Vincent's most trusted security, his right hand in matters both public and private. The fact that Vincent assigned him to drive me spoke volumes about my position in Vincent's life. "Good morning, Anthony," I greeted him as he held the door. "Baker Street, please." He nodded, the ghost of a smile touching his usually stoic features. "Congratulations on your opening day, Miss Ellie." The easy formality between us had become comfortable over time. Anthony kept a professional distance, but there was a warmth in his manner that hadn't been there in the beginning. I suspected Vincent had told him about my insistence on building the bakery myself, without financial help, and that Anthony respected the decision more than he let on. As we drove into the city, I watched the familiar landmarks pass by, marveling at how differently I viewed them now. 6 months ago, I had been an invisible girl, struggling to survive. Now I moved through the world with a new confidence, a sense of belonging that came not just from Vincent's protection, but from discovering my own strength through loving him. The bakery looked exactly as I'd imagined it: warm cream walls, rich wooden display cases, small tables with comfortable chairs where customers could linger. The logo, an elegant script reading "Sweetness and Light" with a small sunburst accent, gleamed on the front window, promising delights within. My staff was already waiting, their faces bright with anticipation. Cora, the pastry chef, had worked in high-end restaurants before burning out on the grueling hours and toxic culture. Marcel and Jenna, the baristas, were culinary students working part-time. And Renata, my manager, was a retired teacher with a gift for organization and a warm manner that made everyone feel welcome. "Morning, everyone," I greeted them, unlocking the door. Ready for our final run-through? The day passed in a blur of activity, testing equipment, practicing workflows, rehearsing customer service scenarios. When Vincent arrived at noon, bearing gourmet sandwiches and salads for everyone, I felt a surge of pride watching him interact with my team. He was charming but not overbearing, genuinely interested in their backgrounds and excited about the bakery's prospects. "You've built something special here," he murmured, as we stood aside, watching the others eat. "Something entirely your own." "I couldn't have done it without you," I admitted, leaning into him. "Yes, you could have," he countered, surprising me. "It might have taken longer, been harder, but you would have done it eventually. That's who you are, Ellie. Determined, resilient, unstoppable when you set your mind to something." His arm tightened around my waist. "It's one of the countless reasons I love you." After lunch, Vincent left us to our preparations, pressing a kiss to my temple and promising to have dinner waiting when I got home. The rest of the afternoon passed in final adjustments, last-minute additions to the menu board, and a full dress rehearsal of opening procedures. By the time I locked up at 6, exhaustion and exhilaration warred within me. Tomorrow, Sweetness and Light would open its doors to the public. My dream, the one that had sustained me through years of struggle, was finally becoming reality. The house was quiet when I arrived home, which was unusual. Typically, Vincent would be in his study at this hour, wrapping up business calls before dinner. Instead, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Meet me on the terrace. V. Curious, I made my way through the house to the back terrace, gasping as I stepped outside. The entire space had been transformed. Tiny lights strung through the trees, candles flickering on every surface, the table set for an intimate dinner for two. And in the center of it all stood Vincent, handsome in a simple button-down shirt and slacks, a champagne bottle and 2 glasses waiting beside him. "What's all this?" I asked, moving into his embrace. "A celebration," he replied, kissing me softly, "for the remarkable woman who captured my heart and is about to take the city's pastry scene by storm." He poured champagne, handing me a glass with a solemnity that made me smile. "To sweetness and light," he toasted, "and to its creator, who brings both into my life every day." We clinked glasses, the sound crystal clear in the evening air. As we sipped, I studied Vincent's face. The strong lines now so familiar to me, the dark eyes that could shift from dangerous to tender in an instant, the rare smile that still made my heart skip. "I have something for you," he said, setting down his glass. "A gift to mark the occasion." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box, different from the one that had held my engagement ring. I opened it to find a delicate gold key on a fine chain. "It's beautiful," I said, lifting it from the box. "But I already have a key to the house." Vincent's smile held a hint of mystery. "This isn't for the house. It's for something else." He took my hand. "Come with me." Curious, I followed him through the house to his study, a room that had become less formal over time, now containing touches of my presence alongside his, a framed photo of us from our engagement party. A small vase of fresh flowers I refreshed each week, books on baking history mingling with his volumes on business and art. Vincent crossed to the far wall, where an abstract painting hung, one of his own works, though few people knew he was the artist. He moved it aside to reveal a small wall safe with a keypad. After entering a code, he stepped back, gesturing for me to approach. "The key unlocks a compartment inside," he explained. "Something I want you to have access to, always." Confused but intrigued, I inserted the small gold key into a lock within the safe. The compartment opened to reveal a stack of documents, legal papers, from what I could see of the top page. "What are these?" I asked, carefully lifting the stack. "Insurance," Vincent replied, his expression serious. "Of a sort." I examined the documents more closely, understanding dawning as I read. The top paper was a deed to a house in my name, in another state. Below that were bank statements showing substantial accounts, also in my name. Passports, American, Canadian, Italian, all with my photo but with slightly different versions of my name. Documentation for a corporation I'd never heard of, with me listed as the sole owner. And at the bottom, a handwritten letter from Vincent. "What is all this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Vincent took my hands, his eyes intense. "It's an escape plan, a way out, if you ever need it. If something happens to me, or if my world becomes too dangerous for you, or if you simply decide one day that this life isn't what you want anymore." I stared at him, speechless. The documents represented a level of planning, of consideration for my well-being, that was staggering. "Vincent, I don't expect you'll ever need it," he continued, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "I intend to keep you safe, to make you happy, for the rest of our lives. But I want you to have choices, Ellie. Always. I never want you to feel trapped, not even by love." Tears filled my eyes as the magnitude of his gift sank in. Vincent Romano, who controlled everything in his domain, who protected what was his with fierce determination, had created a pathway for me to leave him if I ever needed or wanted to. It was perhaps the purest expression of his love I'd ever received. The freedom to walk away, to be safe even if the worst happened. "I love you," I whispered, wrapping my arms around him. "I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes." He held me close, his heartbeat steady against my ear. "I know. I feel the same way." He pressed a kiss to my hair. "But I don't want fear to be any part of what's between us. Not fear of my world, Not fear of the future, not fear of being trapped. Only love, Ellie. That's all I want between us. We returned to the terrace, to our intimate dinner and champagne beneath the stars. As we ate and talked, about the bakery's opening tomorrow, about the engagement party next month, about our future together, I felt a peace settle over me that had been building gradually since that first night at Martin's grocery. Vincent Romano had walked into my life like a storm, upending everything I thought I knew about myself and the world. He had shown me both darkness and light, danger and safety, passion and tenderness. And somewhere along the way, I had found myself, not just the exhausted waitress struggling to survive, but the woman beneath, capable of strength and determination I'd never recognized. Later that night, as we lay tangled in the sheets of our bed, Vincent's arms around me and his breathing deep and steady in sleep, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From the frightened cashier facing down thugs to the soon-to-be bakery owner engaged to one of the city's most powerful men, it seemed impossible. Yet here I was. Tomorrow, Sweetness and Light would open its doors. In a month, Vincent and I would host our engagement party, making our union official in the eyes of both his world and mine. And someday, perhaps sooner than later, we would stand before family and friends to make vows that I knew in my heart we had already begun to fulfill, to protect, to cherish, to choose each other every day despite the complications, the danger, the shadows that would always lurk at the edges of our life together. Vincent stirred in his sleep, his arms tightening around me as if even unconscious. He sought to keep me close, to keep me safe. I pressed a kiss to his chest, directly over his heart, and settled more deeply into his embrace. 6 months ago, 3 men had harassed a young cashier after closing time, unaware that the Mafia boss inside the store would claim her as his own. It should have been the most terrifying night of my life. Instead, it had been the beginning of everything. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of Sweetness and Light, putting the final touches on a 3-tiered cake adorned with delicate sugar flowers. The bakery had exceeded even my most optimistic projections, developing a loyal clientele and garnering attention from local food critics who praised our creative offerings and warm atmosphere. We'd expanded our hours and hired additional staff, and there was talk of opening a second location in the coming year. "It's perfect," Renata declared, admiring the cake. "Sophia will love it." I smiled, pleased with the result. The cake was for Vincent's sister, who was visiting from Europe for the first time since our wedding 6 months ago. The relationship between the siblings had been strained for years, but Sophia had made the effort to attend our small, intimate ceremony, and the ice had begun to thaw. This cake, celebrating her 30th birthday, was part of my ongoing effort to strengthen that fragile connection. "I hope so," I replied, carefully boxing the creation. "Vincent says she has particular tastes." Renata chuckled. Unlike her brother, who would eat cardboard if you baked it, it was true. Vincent's devotion extended to consuming anything I created, though he had developed more discerning preferences over time. His favorite remained my simple vanilla bean cake with raspberry filling, which I'd made for our first wedding anniversary the previous month. "Can you manage here?" I asked, glancing around the busy bakery. The afternoon rush was just beginning, customers lining up for coffee and sweet treats to brighten their workdays. "Of course," Renata assured me. "Marcel and the new girl are handling the counter, and Cora has the kitchen under control. Go celebrate with your family. Family." The word still gave me a warm glow. For so long I'd been alone, my mother gone, my father lost to his addictions and then to death. Now I had Vincent, and by extension, Sophia. And perhaps someday, if we were lucky, children of our own. Anthony was waiting outside with the car, as punctual as ever. He took the cake box from me with careful hands, securing it in the vehicle before holding my door. "Mrs. Romano," he greeted me, the formality softened by the genuine warmth in his eyes. The name still gave me a little thrill, though I'd maintained Sanders professionally for the bakery. In Vincent's world, however, I was Ellie Romano, his wife, his partner, the woman who had somehow tamed the most dangerous man in the city. The drive to our home was familiar now, each landmark a waypoint in the journey of my new life. As we approached the gates, I felt the usual sense of homecoming. of safety, of belonging, of being exactly where I was meant to be. Vincent was waiting on the front steps, Sophia beside him. They made a striking pair, the same dark hair and olive skin, the same regal bearing that spoke of power and privilege. But where Vincent's eyes held warmth when they looked at me, Sophia's remained guarded, assessing. "There she is," Vincent said, coming to help me from the car. He kissed me deeply, unconcerned with his sister's watchful gaze. "How was the bakery?" "Busy, as always," I replied, returning his kiss before turning to Sophia. "Happy birthday. I've brought something special for you." Anthony carefully retrieved the cake box, and Sophia's expression softened marginally as she peeked inside. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "Thank you, Ellie." We moved inside, to the terrace where a small birthday celebration had been arranged. Just the three of us, Maria's exceptional cooking and the cake I'd made with such care. As we ate and talked, I watched the siblings navigate their complicated relationship, moments of genuine connection interspersed with old tensions, unspoken history hovering beneath the surface. "Father would be surprised," Sophia remarked during a lull in conversation, her eyes moving between Vincent and me. "To see you so domestic." Vincent's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Father didn't understand that strength can take many forms. That true power comes from building something worth protecting, not just from the ability to destroy. Sophia's gaze settled on me, curious rather than hostile. "And you, Ellie, do you ever regret it? Marrying into this family with all its complications?" "Sophia," Vincent warned, but I placed a hand on his arm. "It's a fair question," I said calmly. "And the answer is no. I don't regret it. Not for a moment. Even knowing what my brother is," Sophia pressed. "What he's done? What he's capable of? I know exactly who Vincent is," I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. "The good and the bad, the light and the shadow. I chose him with my eyes open." Vincent's hand covered mine, a silent acknowledgement of the truth in my words. We had built our relationship on honesty. Difficult, sometimes painful honesty about his past, about the darker aspects of his world that still occasionally required his attention. "You've changed him," Sophia observed, something like respect flickering in her expression. "He's softer with you, but paradoxically stronger too." "Love does that," I said simply. "It makes us vulnerable and invincible at the same time." Later, after Sophia had retired to her guest suite and Vincent and I were alone in our bedroom, he pulled me into his arms, burying his face in my hair. "Thank you," he murmured. "For today, for everything." I understood what he meant, for accepting his sister despite her guardedness, for creating a home where healing could begin to take place, for loving him completely, shadows and all. "It's what family does," I replied, leaning into his embrace. "We hold space for each other. We forgive. We try again tomorrow." Vincent's arms tightened around me, his body solid and warm against mine. "Do you know what today is?" he asked, his voice soft against my ear. I thought for a moment, then smiled as realization dawned. 18 months since Martin's grocery. Since 3 thugs harassed a young cashier, unaware that the Mafia boss inside would claim her as his own. "The most important night of my life," Vincent said, drawing back to look into my eyes. "The night I found you. The night we found each other," I corrected gently. "The night everything changed." He nodded, his expression solemn. "I've spent the day thinking about how different my life would be if I hadn't stopped at that store, if I hadn't been there when those men came in, if I hadn't seen you standing your ground despite your fear. We would have found each other some other way," I said with a certainty that surprised me. "Some things are meant to be, Vincent. I believe that now." His smile, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face and made him look younger, unburdened, was my reward. "So do I," he agreed, bending to kiss me. "So do I." As night settled around our home, I thought about the journey we'd taken. From that first intense encounter to this moment of quiet intimacy, the path hadn't always been smooth. There had been adjustments, compromises, moments when Vincent's world had threatened to overshadow mine, But through it all, we had chosen each other, again and again, building something neither of us had dared to imagine before that fateful night. A bakery owner and a mafia boss. An unlikely pair, an improbable love story, but somehow, impossibly, it worked. We worked. And as Vincent's arms encircled me and his breathing deepened in sleep, I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't change a single moment of our story, from its dangerous beginning to this peaceful night, and all the chapters yet to be written. In the morning, I would return to my bakery, to the life I had built with my own hands. Vincent would attend to his businesses, continuing the process of legitimization he had begun before we met, and in the evening, we would come together again, two people from different worlds who had created something beautiful between them. Sweetness and light, indeed.